There it is, live.
Hmm.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Let me turn this up.
Hey, I'm gonna try a couple of things.
Can you hear me?
That cut me off completely.
All right, you there? Can you hear
Hey,
me?
can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear
I
me?
can see you're talking, but I can't hear it yet. So let's see.
Okay. I had my microphone muted, but now I don't. Okay. Check. Microphone check. Rate the audio and video. I don't think I should. Are you there? Breaker. Let me turn this up. Maybe it's not up enough. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Breaker. Breaker. Microphone.
Okay, hey Jason, can you hear me? Hey, can you hear me, Jason? Jason, talk. Okay. All right. Can you talk? If you can hear me, start saying stuff. Hmm. Hey, start talking again, Jason. Jason, start talking. Hey, can you talk again? I just muted you. Now I'm unmuting you and making sure your volume's up. Although once you actually start talking, that's going to be way too loud. Let's see. Weird, man. All right, I did that. Why don't you hang up and then try to come right back on and see what happens, Jason?
All right, there it is.
There it
Yeah,
is.
there it is.
There it is.
That's
All right.
weird. All
That
right.
is super weird. I don't know what that's about, but
All right. As long as we're moving in the right direction.
well, that's the thing.
Yeah. Or we're doing it, man. It's freezing out here. It's really pretty. Does it ever? It's crazy. It gets warm at like 6 at night.
It gets warm at 6.
Yeah, that's like the high today. Is it 4 to 6? That's the high of the day.
And what will that high be?
Up to 60.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah, but it's 40 right now. It looks like it should be California 80, but
It's weird, right? Like it totally messes with your brain
it does.
because you can't get a gauge for what the outside is
Yeah,
from the inside, like just looking.
It's so deceptive. I bike to work. Man, it was a lot colder than I thought it would be. But it was good. It was good to get out there,
Get that blood moving,
Get that blood flowing. Get the
That's right. That's right.
synapses firing.
I like that. That's gonna make for a good podcast. How are you doing otherwise? I got your letter, by the way.
Yeah, it's good. Actually, while I was biking, some of that stuff came up. I have an article in my mind why rich Christians are better. I don't know if it's.
Oh boy.
I don't think it ever could go public, but
yeah, no, I don't think that would be right either. Probably.
yeah, no, it's pretty far out there. But I'll write it and send it to you.
Oh, please don't. Oh man.
Okay, we're just doing lead time, and then we're gonna get into it. 5 best.
Yeah, we're gonna get right into it. 5 best. Who's
Okay.
first today? You or me?
I don't remember. I think it's me.
I think it's you. I was just gonna say I think it's you.
I don't think it's me, but
I think it is you. I think it is because I think I was first last week.
I'll go first.
All right.
But I think we're gonna have the same one. I think we gotta talk about Prince.
Oh yeah, that's gonna come up. There's no question.
So I gave that as my one. Like this first.
I was a little nervous. We're gonna have a couple of them the same this time, but we'll see when we get to it.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think this is my only one that will be overlap.
We'll find out. You have no idea how hip and cool I am, man. I might have a whole bunch of good ones in there.
No, mine are unhip and uncool.
I find that hard to believe.
Prince, I can't believe. It's interesting.
Hey, don't start in on it because we're gonna do that in a second.
Why not?
Because I haven't given the intro every week, Jason.
every week on the telephone.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us on Greg and Jason's 5 Best. I am Greg. Jason is joining us from Michigan. Jason, how are you?
I'm doing well.
Awesome. If you are new to this podcast, we go through every week and we talk to each other for a little bit and try to show things we are thankful or grateful for in our lives. And we do 5 of those. They are ranked in no particular order, although I usually win. So that's but there's no order to the ranking. If you enjoy it, that's awesome. We're glad you liked it. Please subscribe. I was looking this week, Jason. There are 300 religious podcasts. There's a top 300 on iTunes.
Yeah.
And we're not in that. So
are we even in the neighborhood?
I have no idea. But I know we're not in the top 300. And that's just Christian podcasts. So I kind of feel like we're doing our job, but maybe the people listening are not doing their job. And, so anyway, this is the time I'm going to ask nicely to please subscribe so we can get into the top 300 on iTunes Christian podcasts.
Do we get a free t-shirt or something?
I don't know that we would, but
I think I would make t-shirts.
I think it'd be worth making t-shirts. If every time we get into another 100, I think that's when I would want a t-shirt.
We're number 300.
Yeah, top 300 podcasts. That's a big deal, man. But it's just Christian podcasts, so it's like it's a much smaller slice of the pie. But we're losing to some really bad podcasts, guys. Like this doesn't make any sense at all. So, the number 1 Christian podcast is, Jason. Any guesses?
No.
Joel Osteen.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, that hurts.
Yeah, I don't think we're gonna catch him, but we can catch a couple of the ones in the. I feel like we should be able to break into that top 300 pretty easy.
I'm shooting for 296.
Yeah, that's the goal. Well, I think if 296 we get t-shirts, I think that'll be awesome. Also, I also want to say that part of the reason we may not be rising as fast as we should be is besides people not telling their friends, which I think is a possibility, that I think our graphic looks really terrible. And I'm the one who made our graphic. Yeah. Jason and I looked stoned outside of a diner in Seattle, but we were pretty tired at the time we took the picture. Yeah. But if somebody can come up with a much better graphic for the podcast, we would happily use it.
Is there a way to see who subscribed?
Not really.
Yeah,
There is some tracking software, but you have to know how to use it, and I do not know how to use it. So,
well, somebody calls in, or nobody calls in, but
what kind of podcast do you think we're doing, Jason?
If somebody emails in or something, how they could do it, it'd be fun to we could make up T-shirts just in preparation, because maybe the advertising,
Yeah,
we're number 296.
Yeah, I think if we get to 296, man, that's when the money starts rolling in for this stuff.
I'm out.
That's then you're splitting off and making your own podcast. 2.5 best every week. So all right, Jay-Z, we might as well get into our 5 best. So anyway, the point of all that story is subscribe, tell your friends. Let's blow this thing up a little bit, all right?
It's crazy because my number one's Prince. My
best,
the first thing that popped in, I was actually listening to Merle Haggard because you had recommended.
Yeah.
And I found out that Willie Nelson's latest album, I think it came out in 2015, is with Willie and Merle.
Yeah, that sounds right.
It's ridiculous. It's a really good album.
Yeah.
It's a really good note to go out on. But I was actually listening to that and reading his, because he's on the cover of Rolling Stone magazine.
Yeah, that's crazy, right?
And so, and then I found out Prince died. That's just a sock to the soul. Like I've had, you may or may not know this about me, but I've done one New Year's resolution in my whole life, and it was the year 1999. And for some reason, I woke up on January 1 and said, I'm going to listen to this song every day this year. So I listened to 1999 by Prince every day of 1999.
You're the weirdest person ever.
That's my one and only New Year's resolution I've ever made. And
wow.
I stuck to it, which is, praise the Lord for that. I don't know.
I guess.
But that guy, he was phenomenal. He was phenomenal. He was just so ridiculously good at music, and it was so interesting to just see the world through his eyes. Whenever I read interviews, whenever I saw people talking about him on talk shows and all that jazz, he was phenomenal.
Yeah, so I was wondering about this because he was one of those people for me that I never really got. Like he's my number one also, because I just like the kind of the social implications of it and the way it was reported and all of that. Like I'm fascinated by Prince, but I'm not musical enough to really appreciate Prince on a certain level.
Yeah.
And so, this is like you and I talk about this all the time. But this is one of those things like you appreciate different elements of music than I do. And so there's things that Prince does that I could go either way on. It doesn't really, that part doesn't make a difference to me, but the cultural impact of Prince, I think, is just shocking to me. And it was and that when he's alive, I think this is the first person who's on that list of like iconic people who died. I guess maybe Michael Jackson. But I was thinking about like people that kind of got famous and stayed famous in my lifetime.
It's true.
Because I was thinking about that with like even some of the guys we've talked about before, like David Bowie and Merlin. Like those guys were famous before I existed. And Prince, I think his timeline was like right after we were born. He's sort of, his first album kind of dropped and it was a big deal. But but yeah, in our life, he sort of rose to prominence, and so that's kind of a weird thing.
Yeah,
in a certain way.
Yeah, I think that's true. And then also, I remember having the conversation in high school, who was the king of pop, and I was always on the side of Michael Jackson.
Yeah.
But then he kind of dipped off the ridiculous, like he did so much space work and all this stuff, and so Prince, the only way he dropped off the ridiculous is just his talent. I don't think there's been a musician anywhere close to him. It's pretty crazy. He owns I think he's made the greatest dance songs of the 80s.
Right.
I think he's made the greatest funk songs
For sure, right?
And he's done R&B. He's done some of the. I remember when he played Letterman back in the 90s or 2000s. I forget what decade we're in, but he played David Letterman, and he'd been singing and he was doing his dance moves. He's a phenomenal dancer too, because he was doing his dance moves and just doing his crazy cool stuff. But at the end of the song, he grabs the guitar just from off stage and just shreds. He just like rips this solo out of nowhere. It's like, and it was like Jimi Hendrix-esque. It was just absolutely amazing. And then he fell back because all of a sudden these girls came from off stage, and
all of a sudden, yeah,
yeah, they just ran from off stage. Like it was part of the production, and he fell down like he was dead.
Mm-hmm.
And then David Letterman just stuck his face in front of the camera and was like, "What was that?" You know? It was like, what is? It was crazy, but that's, I don't know. Do you have a favorite Prince song?
Yeah, I was gonna ask you that. So my favorite Prince song is do you remember 7?
Yeah, that's mine too.
What?
07. That's when I woke up on Friday and I just blasted that.
I've had that song in my brain for a week now.
Yeah. I think I'm gonna record a version of it.
Really?
Yeah. I got this digital audio recorder. So I've been recording my sermons and posting them. And so it's mainly for making music, I think. So yeah. I don't know if anybody's ever gonna hear it because I can't sing worth a bean, but
yeah.
I love that track. I
do too. The video is crazy, but the song itself really rocks. I think there's parts to it that are just really cool. Yeah, I like it. That's my favorite one.
Me too. It dips into folk because it's got some acoustic.
Yeah.
But my favorite part of the song is when it dips into gospel and the sound of many colors. He does like the colors or whatever, and you can hear choirs coming behind him. That's
Do you have any idea what the song's about?
I think I believe it's his depiction of heaven.
Okay. I have no idea what it's about. I don't know that I could give you any of the, like, I think, I know a couple of the lines from the chorus, and that's about the extent of my confidence with that song at all. I really like the song, but I don't know. I don't think I could tell you exactly what the lyrics are all the way through it at all. So
I think it's a play off of Revelation. I don't know.
I wondered that at the time I first heard it too, but I don't know if that's true or not.
I don't know his religious background, but I think he was raised Catholic and then converted to Jehovah's Witness or something like that. I don't.
Yeah, and then maybe left that. That's a really interesting series of articles and things to kind of track down.
Yeah.
One of the things I heard, and I don't know if there's any proof of this yet or not, but allegedly he left like 20,000 recorded songs.
Yeah. I remember
in a vault somewhere.
I remember hearing that in early 2000s. Actually, no, it was before I was out of high school. Yeah, I was in high school when I first read that or heard that on an interview or something. It's he had a bunch of songs because he lives in his own studio, and in the same interview he was saying, they asked him, what do you listen to? And he says, I really don't listen to any other music. I just if I want to hear music, I make it. And then he said he has this huge vault of music, and then every couple of years he just picks out 10 or 12 tracks and releases an album. That was back in the 90s, so I don't know if that's
the rumor though, that it's still there, that he's got like 20,000 some songs. That's just nuts.
I would hypothesize on 07. Maybe it's 666 and then it's completed, in the 7.
Yeah.
Well,
7 is like that number of completion, right? In scripture. So there is that.
Yeah.
I just don't know, like, I don't have any idea.
Yeah. I'll stand in the way of love and we will smoke them all. That's my favorite line.
Yeah, I like that too.
We're gonna
it's good use of smoke. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man.
Who else can put that in a song and make it not sound just totally corny?
I know.
That's what I was thinking about with that song, because like the lyrics just on their own seem really corny and cheesy, and then you listen to the song, it's like, this is the most important thing ever. One of the things I heard, because I've been listening to like other podcasts and reading stuff, just the number of songs he gave away to try to pick up women was fascinating to me.
Wow.
Did you ever hear this? So apparently, so he wrote Manic Monday, which the Bengals released, and that's like their one or two big hits, right?
Yeah.
And he did it just to try to get one of the girls in the band. He's like, he was infatuated with one of the women in the band, and he's like, "Here, have this song."
that's a proper use of talent, I guess.
Yeah, like it's such a Prince move, right? But it's kind of back to your thing about like you just had this vault of songs, and like when
Yeah.
And but apparently he did that several times in his life, like multiple times.
Did he want to date? I know he wrote "Nothing Compares to You" by Sinead O'Connor.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know if that had anything to do with dating or not, but yeah, like it sounds like a lot of the like. I don't get the record industry at all, but it sounds like a lot of the songs that were covered, they were like they weren't covered because they were just not like Prince didn't do them himself, but basically like Prince just gave them to people.
That's cool.
Which is pretty nuts.
Yeah, that'd be it. The world's a little less creative. I liked his imagination. I think that was probably his most defining characteristic, like his imagination.
Yeah, so who takes that mantle now, right? Like who takes the spot of like, because I'm trying to think of anybody else that has like that kind of popularity but is also like that sort of revered by people who do it. That's the like because there are people who are ridiculously popular that all my musician friends are like, yeah, that's not a thing, don't worry about it, and then there's people who make quiet jazz albums I'll never listen to and never know exist, that everybody's like, oh, this guy's the greatest ever, but it doesn't matter because nobody knows them, right? Like that intersection is really interesting to me.
That is interesting. Bieber, it's interesting.
Oh, you go back to Bieber, man. I forget that you like Bieber. All right.
No, I don't. I don't know. I've never sat down and listened to a Justin Bieber song, but whenever I see him on like these like award show, and it seems like that guy can do pretty much everything. He can play everything. But I don't know. Yeah, it goes into the like, I don't know if where we are culturally.
Yeah.
Where that could ever happen again.
Right.
I was just listening to Inside the NBA, and they were talking about how NBA players back when, Barkley and all those guys were playing, they could go out and have a dumb weekend and they wouldn't be on the news, and they wouldn't, like everybody wouldn't be taking pictures and that kind of jazz. Whereas, Prince probably pulled all kinds of crazy stuff, like way out of bounds, way off the cultural, like acceptable chart. But we don't know about him, you know what I mean? And I think with
but that's not the same question, right? Like like or it is, but it's assuming that you have to have that kind of out of boundsness to be great or excellent. I don't know. And then we're kind of back to your question from last week in Whiplash, which you still haven't seen probably.
Yeah, I haven't.
Which is the like, can you be a good person and be good, right? Like, can you be excellent at anything and be a good person?
Yeah.
And Prince, I think you're right about the unacceptable part, but like there's this weird like subcurrent to him and David Bowie, which is like the alternative stories about these guys are they were quiet people who lived in their house. They weren't these like the alter ego was the public one, like this kind of like but their private lives were really conservative in a lot, like in most ways we would define conservative.
Yeah.
Which is really interesting to me. Like I don't understand that, but it's an intriguing piece to think about. But I don't have anybody even close in my head where you would just be like, no, that person's like, all of my musician friends love their musicianship, but we all know who they are because they still write stuff we like to hear.
Yeah.
maybe this is a really long shot, so don't laugh at me if I'm way off on this one. Maybe somebody like John Mayer, who is respected enough as a guitarist. Like they're like, that guy can really play guitar, but then he writes stuff that teenage girls still like to listen to. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know that he does the rest of the stuff that Prince does, though, by any means.
I think that's the closest that the collective us have come. I think, yeah. I'm not the biggest fan of Mayer, but
right. That's me too. Like I don't love his stuff,
but you definitely have to respect his musicianship. You know, I think that's
yeah. I don't have a lot of musician friends who are like, oh no, that guy can't play.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like that's not, you know, and that's kind of like, that's sort of Prince. Like not everything he did was stuff I love, but I don't know. The other guy I'm thinking of that all my musician friends love is Chris Thile. But I don't know that he's ever done anything popular enough to be really accessible.
Yeah. He's phenomenal.
Right. He seems to be able to play just about anything, right? Like that's the other side. Like musicianship wise, he seems to meet the categories, but he's nowhere near the popular icon that somebody like Prince was.
What would you say to a Jack White?
Maybe. I don't know that Jack White is as popular either. I don't think he cuts across enough lines.
Yeah, he's got that one song, "You and Me," down the tree. Something about you and I them better be friends. You know, like you know, that's in commercials and stuff.
Right. Yeah.
But do any teen girls like that stuff?
Yeah, and then on top of it, like Prince did that like 40 times.
yeah, that's true. And honestly, can you think there's no better song to drive fast to than Little Red Corvette?
Right.
Have you ever had the pleasure of driving and then that song comes on? It's just insane. Like I don't know if it's I don't know if I could listen to that song not driving fast.
Yeah. Well, so this is the thing, right? Like I admitted I don't really like Prince. Yeah. Like I never really intersected with my life in any real way. Like he wasn't a huge influence on me. I don't love music enough to really get some of the stuff he was doing. And the second you ask me, do I have a favorite Prince song? Yes. Like I do have a favorite Prince song. And if you start rattling off Prince songs, I'm like, oh yeah, I like that one. I like that one. I like that. And I've got like 6 of those that if they came on the radio, I would never change the station. And I think of them as like songs I enjoy, but I would still say I don't really like Prince. It's like that's the level of it to me. Like that's a whole different thing, right? Like it's just to be that prolific. He put out like 39 albums or something, right?
Yeah,
it's just insane,
incredible. And then amusing story about because I've always liked Prince. Like I kind of all the way through. And when people didn't like him a lot, that's when I liked them the most. Usually,
yeah, that's how you usually are. Yeah.
That's what I, and so a couple of years ago, I was at San Marino as the contemporary worship guy and youth guy, and every once in a while we do like hey, talk to your neighbor about this question. And then I'd always throw in just random questions. But one of them was, what's your favorite Prince song? and everybody was like looking at me for like 5 seconds. And then they just talked about whatever they wanted it to. Circle back that one of the most, like kind of the stuffiest, like one of the snuffier members of our congregation. I happened to see this person on their Facebook said when the day that Prince died, they threw up a cover of Prince, one of the Prince albums, and she said it was the first album I bought.
Wow.
And it was just I don't know if a story goes anywhere, but I thought it was pretty funny that I've been saying that all through these years, and then all these people come up and say, I love them. I secretly love that guy,
Right? The secretly part is fascinating. That's where your Justin Bieber comparison might be helpful, because there might be people who secretly love that guy. Oh boy. All right. Let's move on to number 2. We both had that we both had Prince and kind of mourning and rejoicing in his music and all of that as kind of number 1 for us. So what was your number 2 this week?
My number 2, let me find my page. Here it is. My wife and I, a couple of years back in 2012, we were cruising through a pottery barn, and we saw this thing called the 5-Year Journal, and it was just ask you a question a day And my wife said, "Hey, let's go through that." And I said, "Sure." And so we bought it. And so for the last couple of years, since 2012, since October of 2012, every day we've just kind of asked each other a question and we've answered it, whatever. Just a couple of days ago, I happened to look back at last year what I'd answered on this one question. The question was, if there was something about the day that you could change, what would it be? And my wife and I had both echoed. It was right around the time one of our dear friends had lost his job. Like he had been wrongfully kind of let go and fired. And I remembered back to that day, just praying with fervency, praying with passion. Like we were just broken on behalf of our really good buddy. And turns out a couple weeks later, my buddy was rehired. And just walking through that, like just reliving that experience was just, I think I've done this one before, but it's every once in a while, you're just blown away by the power of prayer. Like, why would God listen? Why would God care? I just lost sound. I don't know. Did you mute your thing? Hold on.
Yeah, I muted it for a second. I had somebody walking through the room, so
sorry.
Just keep talking when that happens.
Okay.
But, super professional podcasting. This might be why we're not in the top 300. We keep going.
296. Here we come.
We're coming for you, 296.
Just the fact that God listens and I honestly think that there is power found in prayer, and it's mostly transformative power for myself. I just getting to know God, but every once in a while God, I believe, allows us to play a part in his master plan. And it was so, I remember feeling the hopelessness of my friend losing his job. And I remember feeling the utter defeat, but then I remember I didn't really thank him enough. I didn't thank God enough. Just a year out, that's kind of the lesson that I was learning a couple days ago. Did I ever really say, "Hey, really, God, thanks for listening to that one"? I kind of just chalked it up to, yeah, he was really good at what he was doing. He kind of earned his way back into his job, but it was a convicting / really encouraging memory of, God answers our prayers sometimes. He well, not sometimes, but all the times, but a lot of times he's saying no and maybe and wait and that kind of stuff. But that's a different podcast. But
that's one of the top 300. All right.
Yeah. So that's my number 2. My 5-year journal experience where prayer, I was just reminded that prayer actually reveals God's power at some points in our lives. It's pretty neat.
That's awesome. That's really, really cool. I'm amazed at that sort of practice. And it's just I'm amazed at prayer and the way God works in prayer, but I'm just amazed at people who journal, or even something little like that, just a 1 question a day thing. I cannot get myself to do almost anything every single day. I'm just not. That level of,
not wired that way.
I don't know what it is. Besides laziness, it's for sure laziness, but it's also, I'm amazed by that and impressed by that and challenged by that. And I think there's huge gifts like what you're naming there of being able to look back and say, yeah, this is what God's done. This is what God is doing. And being able to spot that. I recommend it to everybody. I just can't do it hardly on I struggle with that one on my own.
I don't think it's laziness. I think you have a creative side to your brain that, unless it's like new and refreshing, but it's not that you're undisciplined, because like we've done this every week for a couple weeks. I feel like if you set it on your calendar, you do stuff, and you're a super disciplined guy. But I think it's just sometimes it comes through different avenues,
Yeah, there may be a boredom element to it, but
Yeah.
but no, that's a fair point. But yeah, so anyway, I think it's awesome. It's one of those things that I'm impressed by anybody who does that, and it's really cool to hear the fruit of it.
Yeah, it's fun. I was blown away by it. All right, hit me. What's
That's
your
awesome.
number 2?
My number 2, we both have this mutual friend, Ali Melancon.
Boom!
Yeah, you love Ali. I love Ali. So Ali's worked with me now. We've been working together in some kind of capacity for like 7 or 8 years now. And we've been doing college ministry for a long time. And she is finishing up. She's got like about a year and a half, like, I don't know, about a year and a half left. So she's about halfway through, or a little more than halfway through a master's degree at Fuller that she's been doing kind of distance learning. And then she goes there and all of that. And it's a really cool program. She's doing really good work. And one of the things she had to do for a class this time, she just finished like a 20-page paper on innovation in the church and how we use innovation in the ministry that we're in, and how the institution that we're part of can use that innovation. It was so helpful. And on the whole, like, I wanted to use this one to say kind of on the whole, it's been helpful to have Ali doing that kind of work, because it's the amount of reflection and thought that she's giving to the stuff that we've already done and are doing. We're fairly reflective, thoughtful people as a rule. Like, we try to do that as a practice, but to be able to have somebody look at it and write it up, and then to be able to read like, oh yeah, this is what we did, and this is what we did, and this is what we did. It's in some ways similar to your journaling one, but having somebody else do it and kind of name for you the benefits of what you've been up to. It's just been those conversations and that paper in particular have been really beneficial in the last week for me. Like, it's been really cool to kind of see the fruit of that, and to begin thinking again creatively and excitedly about, yeah, we are doing innovative things that the institution of the Episcopal Church doesn't do, and the institutional church generally doesn't do. And so, why do some of them work? Why don't some of them work? What do we have to offer the church? What does the institution have to teach us? All of those kinds of questions. But I love those sorts of questions. So
that's so good to hear. I just I want to take a look at it when it's done. But I was thinking back, because we started the fire ministry, and she was one of the first people there.
Yeah,
and I'm thoroughly encouraged, but because when we first met her, she had a servant heart of Jesus. Like, she was the build it person, like if I wanted something built, I'd say, hey, do this, and she'd do it, and she would get the stuff out. And then just to hear that her brain is catching up with her heart, and like, she's a force to be reckoned with. She's a ministry giant. I'm proud of her. That's really neat. That's really neat to hear that. But it's also I hear that I dig it when someone else looks objectively at what you're thinking and like what you're trying to put out there, and then they see things that you intended to show up, and then they see other things that are often those are my favorite.
I agree.
Somebody else says, "Oh my gosh, this is actually growing in this direction. There's this branch that's coming out here," and you're like, "I didn't really intend that, but
that's awesome." Yeah,
that's like the best part of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I think you're exactly right.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. That's been a really good, and it's been a really cool process. And you're exactly right. Like, her heart for service is still unparalleled for me. She's still very much like that, but she's definitely she's worked really hard and done amazing stuff to kind of, she's really developed in sort of thought. Like, it's hard to say it when that doesn't sound like an insult, but it's not meant to be an insult. But yeah,
no, I was laughing at that. I was laughing at like one of the because I always bring the interns through books, and I think one of the first books I brought her through was Knowledge of the Holy.
Yeah,
and I remember her thinking like, "What?" I remember her like saying like, "What does this mean?" Like, just being like, "Jason, this is dumb. You're trying to teach me stuff, and then
Yeah,
I bet
she still does that every once in a while. We were taking a Greek class together. Like I have a friend in town who teaches Greek lessons, and so it's like biblical Greek. So we're working on biblical Greek, and I had another friend who wanted to study it. So it was like I put this like small team of people together to take this biblical Greek class, and we're going through it, and we've been probably about 6 or 7 weeks, maybe 2 months, and Allie finally goes, well, so when I visit Greece, you're telling me I can't use this stuff? And it was like, she was so mad. That was the end of her Greek lessons.
I'm out.
That's exactly. She left that day, and she never did it again. It was fantastic. It was one of the funniest moments ever. So, but it is awesome to watch the way she's invested time and energy and effort into growing that part of her, and yeah, she's so good at it. So it's really cool to see.
That's cool. That makes me happy. That's really cool.
Yeah.
My number 3 is a couple weeks ago. I think it was good. Yeah, it was just last week. This guy named Sturgill Simpson. Have you heard that guy?
Okay, I love Sturgill Simpson. Yeah.
I listened to his first album, and it was pretty good. But this new one, it's.
Oh, which one do you mean by his first album?
Oh, I don't know. Maybe not his first one, but his, I don't know, 2012-y, 2013-y. I don't know.
He had like a meta modern sounds and country.
Yeah,
music.
that's the one.
Yeah, so that's probably his first big album. He had one before that was really, really good, and then that one.
This new one's ridiculous, but you know the thing that makes him, it's interesting because it's right around the time that you introduced me to Merle Haggard.
Yeah,
he's got that guy voice, you know.
It's ridiculous. Yeah,
I'm tired of the falsetto. Okay.
Yep, I've told you this for years, man. I'm with you.
Everybody except Prince, you know, he knew. Maybe Prince with Prince maybe should pass the falsetto, like the everybody going high.
Yeah, I like that. That's good. Commemorate his death with a real change in our culture. That'd be fantastic.
Oh, and P.S. I think every single talk show should make everyone cover Prince for the rest of the month, or for the rest of 2 months. You know, we should be hearing Prince covers like crazy. What's going on? But anyway,
yeah.
But back to Sturgill.
Jimmy Fallon did that last night. But
yeah, don't even go into there. Sturgill. He owned the stage, and then I appreciated his it's like a tough. I dig his style. He's got on his new one. He covers a Nirvana song. I forget.
Oh, really?
But yeah, it's good. He's.
I started to listen to the new one, and I just didn't like it yet. So I was gonna buy it last week because Sturgill Simpson is one of the guys that I like when his albums come out. He and Jason Isbell, I sort of discovered at the same time through a friend Phil, and then through my friend Greg, and it was and I kind of like is like I really like the last one, and this album it's just a little darker or a little less country-ish or something to me. I just didn't like it quite the same way, but his voice is ridiculous. It's just not fair. It's true. It's so good. So I was playing it for one of my buddies, and he said one of the things that Sturgill Simpson does that's really interesting is he records, or at least he used to. This new one I haven't listened to well enough yet, but he tends to record sounds like they were recorded in the 70s, except for drums. He records those in really modern ways. So he has this like, so all of his music has this weird kind of intersection.
Yeah.
Where his voice and the slide guitar and the way he plays guitar all sounds like 70s country, but his drum and percussion stuff all sounds like current modern drums. And so it has this like, it creates this weird kind of ambiance to it.
I'd never heard that I never heard that verbally, but that's putting a finger on one of the favorite parts about the music. It seems like a clash with this. It actually has a 70s like Deep Purple sound.
Yeah. This new album especially has that, I feel like. Yeah.
And then it does have a modern like rhythm. That's cool. That's a really neat way to look at the music or hear it.
Yeah, that's a shout out to Joe Sanchez. He's the one who pointed that out to me. So thanks, Joe.
Well done, Joe.
Yeah, we're all over it, Joe.
Boom. Joe.
That's also the guy who I felt most bad for when Prince died, because that dude loved Prince.
Ah,
Yeah.
hey Joe, what you doing with that gun in your hand?
Oh, not. Oh, jeez. All right.
That's what's his face, Jimmy
Yeah,
Hendrix.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It is, but it has nothing to do with what we're talking about. Except the guy's name is Joe.
It's funny that you know who else died this year was Lemmy. Lemmy died, the singer and songwriter behind Motorhead,
Yeah,
and he absolutely detested Prince because he thought he was just ripping off Jimi Hendrix.
yeah. That seems weird to me. Like that. Like that's sort of they are both black, right? Like, isn't that
Yeah.
isn't that the extent of that critique? I feel like.
I think it's with the no, because when the early Prince, like Purple Rain, that could have been Jimi Hendrix. You know, he like with the mustache and kind of the purple the outfit. You know,
I
like
guess. Yeah,
like
yeah.
there was a theatrical side to Jimi Hendrix that I think
Sure.
that Prince played off of. But it's interesting that Prince he went into genres that Jimmy, you know,
Yeah.
even dream of. Prince was ridiculous. Anyway.
Yeah. All right. My number 3. Is that right? Yeah.
I believe that, yeah, because I just
All
did
right.
my.
All right. My number 3. This one is like an in between. I don't know if it's a positive or a negative. It's got all of those elements to it. So, some of the women sports writers at ESPN just released a video called hashtag more than mean. And basically it's meant to shine light on the way women in sports are treated by men generally, and especially on like Twitter and Facebook comments and things like that. And so it's this brutally hard thing to watch. But what they did is they took two ESPN female either writers or reporters, and basically had a generic group of guys who agreed to read them their tweets. So the guys are reading tweets that the women received, but not that the guys wrote. That's important to remember when you watch the video. Otherwise, you'll get. I mean, you should get angry anyway, but you'll get even more angry. So the guys reading these tweets to these two women are just reading tweets that the women received from Twitter in response to their work, and the guys haven't read the tweets before. The women have, so they know what's coming to some degree. But it's some of the most like brutal stuff. It's so it's one of my 5 best because it's just so well done, and it's so like simple and poignant, and it's sort of the like other side of like Jimmy Kimmel's mean tweets. I think that's what they're trying to do with the more than mean, is that there's like mean tweets which are like we kind of laugh at, and then there's this stuff which is like just abusive and assaulting verbally, and it's just like it's brutal to watch the guys sort of struggle to even read some of the stuff out loud because it's so offensive that some of the, like there's a couple of times where the guys are like, I don't think I can read this, and then they end up having to read it anyway because that's part of the deal. But yeah, it's and to think that happens to people because they just want to do their jobs.
Yeah.
And I don't know, one of the women I've never seen or really read any of her stuff, but the other woman I've listened to before, and she's really good. It was just so surprising. Like it was like, man, I just can't believe the amount that they have to go through or put up with just to watch sports, which are nothing really, right? I mean, that's like you and I have talked about sports a few times in the last few weeks about like it's cruel and it's interesting and it reveals stuff, but that behind the scenes stuff of like that's just there's a lot going on in that around anger and around anonymity and around how our culture treats women generally anyway. But yeah, I don't know what to do with it yet, but it's just one of those. It's really powerful. If you haven't seen it yet, you should see it.
I'm gonna go take a look at it. But
yeah, if you're listening to this and you haven't seen it, you should go see it. It's like it. Well, you, Jason, it'll make you cry.
Yeah, because I'm a softie.
Yeah, you cry at just about everything. So that's
And plus, we have girls. Once you have a daughter,
yeah, it does change that dynamic quite a bit.
What I like about this, and it goes back to your innovative stuff, is I haven't even seen it yet, but I can't wait to see it. But I appreciate that you're bringing up that it's so good when somebody thinks in a new way how to use an old, like not necessarily an old, but just a new way of, because we're hearing these tweets and it's a play off of that, Jimmy
Yeah.
Kimmel's mean
Yeah.
tweets, but it's done in a way that has depth, that has meaning.
Yeah.
I remember a couple years ago when I was working at St. Andrews, this as a youth, a youth guy or whatever, and one of the youth, this guy who would every once in a while lead worship, he had everybody take out their cell phones and text somebody, well, pray for somebody, and then text them that they were praying for him. And it was, and I've redone it a couple times just in other places, but I just appreciated this guy named was David Ottestad, and he just opened that. I appreciated when they use something that usually is like it has like negative connotations, like everybody has their cell phones and everybody's doing this and everybody blah blah blah, but he used it in such a way as to make it positive. And it sounds like they use these tweets to make a statement, to make a point, and to get us thinking and ask questions. And
one of my favorite expressions for that is from improv, but it's called over accepting. And it's, so you take a gift that would normally be something you would want to block or not receive, and instead of not receiving it, you take that and over accept it. So how do you recognize even the bad things you're given as gifts that can be used to further the story or further what God's doing? And it's a good example of that. And I love that when that happens pretty much anywhere. But this, you're right. These two examples are pretty, like, it is part of what they're doing is they're over accepting these ridiculous tweets, and in hope for making change so that people start this. And in some ways it's interesting because there's some other stuff going on around shame there that, like, we've talked before about this, about bullies and some of that in our culture too, but there's an appropriate role for shame sometimes, right? Like when we say things like, well, you should be ashamed of yourself. Like, that's true. Like, there are times when you do things that are shameful, and what these guys have done is shameful. And if the culture doesn't shame them for it, then we're not responding sort of appropriately somehow. I don't know. I don't totally know what to do with all that, but it is like, this is like a video meant to shame the kind of responses guys have to women, and it should, like, it's terrible.
Yeah. And that's cool. Just flipping the lights on.
Yeah.
Okay. That's it. That's your number 3, I think. And then I think my number 4, and I meant to bring in this magazine. The local library is pretty cool around here in that there's a magazine rack right outside the entryway where people just come and they leave magazines. I leave my Rolling Stone magazines with my address cut out.
Where's it at?
It's right outside my library. Like
okay, gotcha.
Public library.
Yeah.
And I picked up this magazine. I think the name of it is Poets and Writers or something like that. I'll bring it the next time. I meant to bring it today, but I went on my bike and I forgot to put it in my backpack. But there's an article in there, and I think it was a January-February edition of Poets and Literature. Like, it's for writers of poetry and writers of short stories and that kind of stuff. But one of the articles in there was an article on this movement, or a couple of guys started this organization called Call Me Ishmael. And you might need to help me on that. It's an opening line to some novel. You know what that is?
Yeah, it's Moby Dick.
Is it Moby Dick? Yeah. Call Me Ishmael. So they set up this number, and it has and I'll bring that maybe next week too, because it has
so prepared.
Yeah, but the cool part of it is like they just set up this number because they were talking about best all-time lines to start at whatever. So they started this phone number and this website where you call and you can leave a message, and you can go to this website and hear what people leave. And these messages have the question is that you're calling Ishmael to talk about is, what's your favorite novel and how has it kind of changed you? How has it changed you? And so and that it keeps this. I guess this thing's growing steam, and now they've set it up. It looks like an old like payphone, and they're rolling that out and putting it in like bookshops and
that's cool.
Libraries and that kind of thing. So you pick up this thing and you say, call me Ishmael. And so you're calling this Ishmael, hey Ishmael, and then you tell him, hey, this book changed my life. And I thought it was, I needed a little hope, you know, like it was just one of those, that's fun. Like I've just been watching like the news and all the ridiculousness of the politics and all the, there's just craziness that's going on around our country and around the world, and just this ray of hope that came through this article. Just there's a couple guys they're thinking through how can we get some conversation going and how can we learn from one another. And every once in a while, I think they type up one of these calls like on a typewriter, and then they read it or something online. I don't know. I didn't really go into it. I'll bring some more info next week, but like the phone number and the website. I bet you if you looked around for,
I bet you could find it if one were to put any effort into it at all. You could probably find it.
Call me Ishmael. That made my 5 best just because a little hope, you know. And
I like that one, and also it plays into your love of old technology.
Yeah,
of loving things after they become not cool.
Yeah.
You're like the oh, maybe that is hipster. I'm trying to decide if that's hipster or like the opposite of hipster. But like as soon as something becomes not that cool, then you're like all in on it. Yeah. It's kind of like the way some people buy Christmas candy.
My friend coined the phrase, that's an Etsy biker. That's an Etsy biker move.
Yeah, I like that one. But you have that like with the. I think that hits all the like sweet spots for you. Like it's hopeful, it's positive, it has this like old phone booth thing, which for whatever reason you probably think is fantastic and have some attachment to.
Yeah, and then the novel stuff. I dig
that. Yeah.
I just got back. It's weird how I don't really read novels in the winter, but spring I always want to read novels for some reason.
Interesting.
But I'm proud of myself in that I had a youth kid back at my last post whose mom named him after Dashiell Hammett. And I Facebooked her and said, what's your favorite Dashiell Hammett novel? And so now I'm reading the Glass Key or the Green Key, whichever the one that. But it's wicked good. He's a wicked good author. It's the Glass Key. And that
interesting.
I'm
in the like I have like a list of ones I want to read this summer that I've got going. So I think the problem is once I start, I can't do other stuff. So I've got to figure that piece out. But because I just read like crazy.
And I did pick up The Politics of Jesus. And
what?
Yeah, that's for
how about that?
20 years or how many years you've been telling me to do it?
Hard to believe.
Just keep knocking.
Yeah, that's all right. Sometime next year you'll watch Whiplash, so it'll be great.
No, I'll get around to it.
I know you will.
Next time it rains. All right.
Hey. All right, number 4 for me. Our oldest daughter Colette is 10 and she does gymnastics and she's pretty competitive and really good at them. But she had a moment in her recent meet. Well, first off, I have to say that she won the meet. She was like the overall winner for the meet. But in one of the events, the event she struggles with the most is vault, which you run down the row and you jump on this vault and then you have to do some kind of move after that. And she always does pretty well on it, but it's her worst event and she always gets nervous about it and everything else. But this Sunday at this meet, she did her first vault. You do 2 vaults in a gymnastics meet. So she does her first one, nails it, does a really good job. It's probably the best I've seen her do the vault. And she's really excited. You can tell she's happy. Everything's going well. Her coaches talked to her real quick before her second vault. She steps on the mat, does her second vault. And as she does the second vault, like she just oversteps or just misses the vault, not quite perfect or whatever. And it like gives out. she falls, she kind of tumbles, she hurts her heel a little bit, and like just smacks the mat. So it's the first time in competition where she hasn't really done what she was trying to do. And so she had this moment of like, you could tell she was like really bothered by it. So she runs back to her coach. She sits on the side. She cries a little bit. Her coach talks to her. And then because that was like the third of 4 events, she had to go to the 4th event and do bars next. So it was the part that was the best about it was I was just really struck by the way in which I think the word that kept coming into my head was composure. That like hitting, like having that sort of obvious failure, public embarrassment, all of that stuff that really could be like debilitating and kind of, especially for girls and at that age, could be like the worst thing that could happen to you. And then to be able to kind of power through that, shake that off, and just go do something. And then she ended up winning that event. Like she ended up winning bars, which was her next event. So she won bars and then she won the overall. And it was just like, I just remember being just floored by how hard it is to recover like that in life.
Yeah.
And how important it is to learn how to do that. Like that you have to get practice learning some of that stuff, because there will come other moments in her life where she's going to have to find that kind of composure, and she's going to have to be able to recover from a misstep or a fall or whatever it is in real life, in things. And so to be able to do it in something that doesn't really matter, although she's worked really hard at it and spends a lot of time on it. But to be able to do that in a job or with a spouse or in a family or whatever that is later in life, I don't know. Like we've talked about that a few times recently about sports again, but it's one of those, to me, this was one of those like really clear markers of a couple of things going on. And like you and I joke about crying all the time and things like that. And there is an element of that at play here too. And the old sort of narrative about boys don't cry and all that kind of stuff, like as harmful as all of that stuff is, there is the other side of it, which is there is something about really being able to control those parts of your life to some degree. Like there are times where you should be crying, like that's absolutely human and what you should be doing. And then there are times where you need to be able to stand back up, brush yourself off, and move on to the next thing without that destroying you, right? And
yeah,
I don't know. I never know how to find all of those balances or do any of that right. But it was just really cool to watch of like, man, you could see her almost physically pull herself back together again. And it's like, man, that's an important skill.
I dig that. That's awesome. Because those moments right after being like there is that place where true Christianity or true like character shines.
Yes.
In and through how you react to being crushed. I don't know about you, but sometimes I'm ashamed. It was interesting when I was in San Antonio. One of my fellow co-pastors, he went through a heart scare, and I talked to him afterwards, and he said, "You know what? I was scared. I was actually frightened or shocked by my fear, and I was ashamed of it. I was like, it was not how I thought I was or where I was in my faith in Jesus, and that makes me think of this. I was just because those moments when I've learned so much through people that have been crushed right in front of me,
right?
But then have humbly stood up and kind of taken it and not complained, not passed the buck. But
right. And I think that's the other piece, right? Like there's nobody to blame there. Like she did it herself. Yeah. She missed it. And yeah, that piece of not passing the buck is a huge part of this, right? That
way to go. That's awesome.
That was really cool.
Let's just pause and just say, Colette, like there's some people, I don't know. Some people are, they're cute. And then their cuteness goes away and they're not,
Yeah.
Colette is cute. And because I saw pictures of her winning.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because your wife posted.
Oh, yeah. She does that.
She's growing. she's growing into beautiful. You know, like
Oh, that's cool.
don't you love when your kids are, I don't know, I saw that in your kid and I was like, yeah, that's good. You know, like I love when and just that story just adds to her beauty. You know, she's got some core stuff that's going on that
Yeah,
way
yeah, yeah.
way better than all of us, you know.
Yeah,
I
she's
don't know.
feisty.
Yeah.
I like the feistiness.
Yeah. Anywho, uh my five. My five is, it's interesting. We talked about this last week because your car, you got in a car accident,
Yeah.
kind of jet. My car, I started to hear a
Oh, that's not good.
coming from the front.
Yeah.
So then I took it to my mechanic, this guy named Gene, small town mechanic, and he says, you know, I'm not. This is not really my wheelhouse. Uh, Take it down to this place, and I went down to Robin Hood Muffler, and he ended up working on my car, but it was just interesting. It was slightly annoying because it's small town
Yeah.
mechanics,
Yeah.
but it was not, it wasn't shameful or him. It was very, it was a kind of raising the bar for the churches. I don't know, like
Right. Yeah.
the
Yeah.
only
No, that's awesome.
the only place that I've ever experienced that was in is San Antonio, because the Young Life guy Daniel Player,
Oh yeah.
when he would get all the youth leaders together, and we would say, you know, like this kid is really struggling with this. Well, he should be around you, you know, like, and we would hand around kids to different youth groups, uh,
Yeah.
depending on where people were in their faith and their walk and that kind of jazz. And barring that, there's nowhere else I've ever experienced that where you know, if somebody was in this town and was fired up about, you know, Willimon Hauerwas, I would say, hey, start hanging out at Greg's church. You
Right.
know, like it's it was a mirror that was kind of just up to the church saying, nah, we're not anywhere near we need to be, and these mechanics are at a place where we need to be as a Christian church.
Right. It what it questions or calls into questions is what we prioritize, right?
Yeah.
So like, are we prioritizing the health of the people we care for or claim to care for? Or are we prioritizing, you know, our own Sunday attendance or our own whatever, our own egos, usually as pastors, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a huge, because like that's the mechanic, right? Like he's valuing your relationship, whatever non-relationship or relationship that is,
Yeah.
to the level of saying this isn't what I'm good at. And so then he also values the care of that car, right? Like I could fix it potentially, but it's going to take me longer and I might not do as good a job and it might cost more. Or you can take it to this other guy and this is what he does, right? And so, and he might just not like working on that part of the car too. Who knows? But but even the non-cynical side of it, right? I mean, I think that's the, there's a way in which I go back and forth on this. And I think you do too. We've talked about this before, about the way in which denominations are in some ways sort of sad things for us, that they mark disunity. But this is one of the ways where they can have a sort of practical unity that really matters if we can keep ourselves in connection enough where, like there's different wirings in our people, and there are some of us who need, you know, liturgical stuff all the time and need to be reminded. There's contemplative ones of us. And not every church should have to do that for everybody or be able to do that for everybody.
Yeah.
But we need to be able to hold each other accountable and speak truth to each other still. There's a lot that's hard there, but I do love that you had a mechanic who was honest enough to tell you the truth.
Yeah. And it was cool.
At his own expense, right? I mean, that's the part of the story that's impressive.
Yeah, that is. And it was small town mechanics. I guess that's just the way it was. Cause I was talking to the guy, Gene handed me over to a guy named David, and David, he was like, yeah. And then when I get transmission stuff, I send it over to Gene, you know, that guy knows transmission. I was like, wow, what a sense of family, what a sense of like brotherhood, you know, of humanity. Yeah. It was cool. It was really,
it's the way it ought to work, right?
That's the way it ought to work.
Oh, that's awesome. All right. My number 5 is one we've talked a little bit about before generally, but more specifically, Fuller Videos just released the Bono and Eugene Peterson conversation on Psalms.
I just saw the picture of Eugene Peterson with Bono. Like because
That's the crazy, yeah.
He looks happier than any child has ever been. Like he looks like a little kid right next standing next to Bono. He's like gonna explode. Anyway.
Yeah, when you watch the video though, it's totally a different feel than that. It's really funny because it's like I actually had somebody tweeted one of the stunning things from the video is sort of the gravitas that Peterson has even for Bono. Like the deference Bono has for Eugene Peterson is really impressive. And it's impressive on both sides because Peterson's earned it in a certain way, but it's also impressive that Bono recognizes it, right? Like that he's aware enough to not fight for that or to try to have that back, right? It's just it's a really I had a couple of like frustrations with it, which are disappointing, but I think it's really edited, right? Like they really like cleaned it up and edited it like into like small sections. And I'm sure there's reasons they did that, but I really wish just the whole conversation was available. Like I would just love to hear the unedited kind of podcast form of that, where it's just Peterson and Bono talking for a couple hours on the Psalms. Like that's fascinating to me. And the way in which they did it was really like, so that part, but outside of that, even like, I think we talked before about how the Psalms, for me, just never really resonated. Like the Psalms were never a huge part of my faith life growing up. Like I knew Psalm 23. I knew you're supposed to read Psalms. I had a youth minister once who had me go through and like highlight every attribute of God in the Psalms. So you just, every time it says God is something, you just write it, you highlight it or whatever the metaphors used for God. And so like looking back, those were probably important things, but I could never figure out how to read the Psalms devotionally. I never knew what to do with them doctrinally, or how to think about them. And so it's only later now as an adult that I've learned to pray Psalms. And I think to think of the Psalms prayerfully and to begin praying them, and the way some of the images and scriptural images are sort of collected in those prayers and get used then in the rest of Scripture. Like, I don't know, maybe the Psalms aren't for young people necessarily, but maybe they are. Maybe I'm just, this is one of the ways I'm stunted, but I've really come to enjoy the Psalms in the last kind of in the new year. Really, like it's been something that a couple of conscious changes I've made with the Psalms in this last year that have been really, really helpful.
Yeah, I think I still struggle with my connection with the Psalms.
Yeah.
And I stumbled across maybe. I think age is maybe it. Maybe I need to be a little older. Maybe I need to. My son, we just started homeschooling. We brought he was loving public school. My wife was missing teaching him, and he was missing homeschool too. So we just came to that decision. Anyway, so he's just started writing poetry.
Yeah.
And I couldn't be more proud. It was just cool. He's just writing poetry, and I was just talking to him. I think it was yesterday or today. I was, for some reason, some poets I connect with some poets and some I don't.
Really.
Yeah. And I've read all these poets and I like poetry, but when I think I mentioned this before, but when I opened up Dylan Thomas, for some reason he's heads above all the other poets in my mind, and it's no rhyme or reason. It's just I just feel like he's writing what I'm thinking. He's like, it's like when you're watching a movie and you're like, I hope it goes here, and he goes there. He's like, that's awesome. And that's the way it is with his poetry to me. And I think that's kind of the only times that I've connected with the Psalms is with lament.
Yeah.
And when I lost my mom to cancer in 2003, now, and I've already mentioned, he was my bridgeway into the Psalms, just because like reading his work was like reading my thoughts, and then he would mention Psalms, and then I'd read those, and it was a kind of a bridge, and it would just stir up some of the emotions and some of the thoughts and that kind of stuff. but on a regular basis, I struggle with connecting with the Psalms because I feel like of the poets, like he's not that good.
Yeah. No, so it's funny. This is fantastic. Like Peterson names that in that video. He's like, it's not good poetry. I was like, what? It was great to hear him say it though, because it was like his point was like it's been translated, it goes across generations. Like it's not like our brains don't work in Hebrew poetry really. Like we don't have like that's like a lot of the poetic nuance and stuff we just don't get. Like it's just and so it's really interesting to hear somebody who loves the Psalms like Eugene Peterson loves the Psalms just acknowledge right up front, like it's not because the language is more beautiful. Like that's not it. Like that's not what does it. One of the things for me that's been helpful is intentionally trying to pray them, but then connecting them to the other liturgical readings or the lectionary readings for that Sunday. So if I just take the Psalm, kind of some of the stuff Phil's been sending out, but if I just take the Psalm and sit with the Psalm and then spend time with that Psalm and then say, okay, how does this Psalm shape and is shaped by these other readings? That's opened up a lot because it allows me to treat the Psalm a little different than I maybe would have before. But the other piece, and I think this is an important one, like what you're naming is one of the ways poems sort of affect us, right? So poems affect us because they allow us to think and reflect on things that have happened to us, or like, hey, it's going to go this way, or I'm in grief and this is like grief, right? But the other side to poetry, and this is why I think Psalms are important and really good poetry is really important, is that it also works forward. There's the moment this became really clear for me, there's a Robert Frost poem, like a clearing on a snowy evening or something like that. And the poem is just a guy riding his horse into this clearing on a snowy evening. And it's a kind of a sad poem. It kind of has this like haunting feel to it, but it's also beautiful. And I remember like, so my kids, Josh learned that one when we were doing homeschooling a long time ago, and he memorized that poem. And I remember thinking to myself at the time of, I've been in the spot Frost is describing, right? Like I've been in a clearing when it's starting to turn dark and the snow's coming down, and it's amazing. And I remember thinking the only language I had for that experience was, wow, this is really cool. This is really amazing, right? And that's the language I have. That's what I had to describe and reflect on what was happening as it was happening. But my son now has memorized this Robert Frost poem, and then next time he happens to be in a clearing on a snowy evening, like now the language he has been formed and shaped and is intentional. And it's not just wow, even though he may think that, wow, he's also going to think this Robert Frost poem, right? And so there's a way where poetry works both directions. And I think that's part of what Psalms is supposed to be doing for us, is it not only names what we are experiencing and have experienced, but it gives us language for when we do experience the things that Psalms is sort of naming that we are going to experience. I don't know.
That's good. That's a good word.
All right. That's what we got, dude.
That's all we got.
That's our 5. We both did our 5, man.
We did our 5.
5 best.
5 best. Jason,
always fun.
Greg and Jason.
Subscribe. Going to 296, baby. On our way.
Woo! Headed to 2000s. What?
No, 296, bro. We might be in the 2000s already. I don't know.
296.
296. Here we come. We're coming for it. I'm going to find out next week who 296 is, and we're just going to put them on blast. Let them know right up front. We're taking their spot.
Woo! I called you out.
Yeah. All right, brother. We'll talk to you later. Thanks, Jason.
Bye.
Peace.